After one term in office, Carrie Lam will go down in history as one of the city's most divisive leaders.
Lam will be remembered for being at the helm during the 2019 protests and the subsequent, worst landslide defeat in history during the local elections the same year.
But her time in office saw a massive overhaul of Hong Kong's political and civil liberties.
They have used basically instill fear in Hong Kong society. The most vibrant civil society in Asia Pacific has been completely dismantled.
And a deadly Omicron outbreak that is driving an exodus and crippling the city's economy.
穩定都好高，所以嗰陣時已經決定咗申請移民。
我哋基本上所有嘅做生意嘅人都喺度放緊血。咁你繼續咁樣放血嘅時候咧，遲早大家都真係會即係一命嗚呼㗎啦。
With the city set to elect its next chief executive in May, will the new leadership revive Hong Kong's economy and address long-standing social issues that have been brought to the fore with recent political developments?
I am taking this earliest opportunity to inform the public through the media that I will not contest in the coming chief executive election.
After months of speculation, Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam announced in April this year that she will not seek a second 5-year term of office. Her time in charge of the Special Administrative Region was perhaps the most tumultuous in the city's modern history, marked by unrest, reduced civil liberties, and a global pandemic. As she hands the reins of leadership to her successor, in what state does she leave the city of Hong Kong? It is March 2017. Veteran civil servant Carrie Lam was elected as Hong Kong's first female chief executive.
Congratulations, Mrs. Lam.
Hong Kong, our home, is suffering from quite a serious divisiveness and has accumulated a lot of frustrations. My priority will be to heal the divide and to ease the frustrations and to unite our society to move forward.
Coming into office in the aftermath of the pro-democracy umbrella movement, Lam pledged to unite the city at a time when concerns over Beijing's influence in Hong Kong were brewing. Despite the message of unity, in just over 2 years, Hong Kong would descend into chaos.
Hong 左邊就係叫做鵝頸橋，右邊去到嘅就係堅尼斯道啦。所以哇，呢度即係19年嘅時候係催淚彈啊、汽油彈都橫飛嘅日子啦。咁好多事發生啦。嗱。
In June 2019, journalist Ronson Chan was covering Hong Kong's largest protest for Stand News, one of the city's most popular independent news sites. The demonstrations had gained momentum by this point. At its peak, almost 2 million people took the streets in protests. Efforts to quell the unrest quickly turned violent.
有一次喺嗰個位係最慘啦，呢個位，啲防暴警察啊衝翻嚟，一落車咧見人就噴，咁我哋啲記者咧就中晒招，然之後咧係好辣啊！我記得我後尾咧坐咗喺藍色嗰個地方咧，嗰度坐咗喺度咧係啲人幫我噴水啊、抹身啊，但係真係好辣，坐成個鐘先喐得，所以係好記得啊。咁香港畢竟亦都捱過咗好多難關，但係好要承認嘅，而家呢個情況、呢個環境嘅轉變係我哋從來未應對過、未面對過嘅。
At the center of the turmoil was a controversial extradition bill, championed by Lam's administration. A proposed amendment to the bill would have allowed for the extradition of suspects to mainland China for trial.
The extradition bill touched on a raw nerve of the Hong Kong people, which is that they could be sent to the mainland to face criminal trial, which is something that one country, two system was designed to avoid millions of people turning up to the streets to protest against the bill.
Under pressure from the dissenting public, Lam ultimately shelved the extradition bill in September 2019. But it was not enough to appease protesters who called for her resignation. The protests continued, only fizzing out when the pandemic hit in early 2020. In total, the civil unrest left thousands injured and caused over $8.5 million in damages to public property. It left the city divided.
Lam I think she tried her best, to be fair. I think she loved Hong Kong. She saw herself as a loyal civil servant, but that basically means the need to pledge allegiance to Beijing. And that runs up against some of the more cherished ideals of what Hong Kong identity is supposed to be.
In the aftermath of the 2019 protests, a national security law was unilaterally imposed by Beijing, bypassing Lam's office. When it came into effect on June 30th, 2020, Hong Kong's chief executive positioned it as limited in scope, designed to prevent a repeat of 2019.
The legislation aims to prevent, curb, and punish acts of secession, subversion of state power, terrorist activities, and collusion with foreign or external forces to endanger national security.
In every other countries, they have their own national security law. Just like in the US, they have the Espionage Act. So I really don't understand what's the big deal about Hong Kong having these national security law, whereas like basically every place in the world has it. We really don't want to see a citywide chaos like the one that happened in 2019 to happen again.
The national security law is quite broadly worded. The fear here is that this broad wording will actually be applied broadly to people deemed or activities that's deemed to have been covered under the broad laws of collusion with foreign forces or acting with foreign forces.
In the year following its passage, more than 150 people were arrested for violating the national security law, including prominent political activist Joshua Wong.
Since the implementation of the national security law, they have jailed and imprisoned most of my colleagues in the Legislative Council. They have used the national security law to basically instill fear in Hong Kong society so that everyone will be afraid to speak up.
Last year, the new legislation also led to the closure of over 60 organizations, including political groups, NGOs, and media companies. Among them are Apple Daily, the city's largest pro-democracy newspaper, and Stand News, a popular independent news site. Both ceased operations last year after police raided their offices and arrested employees for allegedly breaching the national security law.
我95年開始加入《蘋果日報》做呢個攝影記者，咁去到2021年6月30號就公司被迫結業，大部分高層都俾港署拉晒啦。其實冇諗住咁突然咯，都好唔開心㗎。跟住無奈有其他嘅報紙或者網上嗰啲都陸續紛紛結業。 被迫結業，咁跟住我都冇再打算會繼續做，其實都冇乜邊間可以繼續做咯。公司知道係你做過蘋果，佢都婉拒咗你，我就轉咗做揸呢個夜間嘅體間的士司機。
我老婆話：你喺香港嘅話，你就唔好再做記者啦。好認真嗰句，除咗做記者，我都唔知自己識做乜。傳媒機構剩翻呢一啲，佢哋喺一啲冇爭議性新聞裏面，佢哋都會繼續做好自己嘅工作。我哋可能要做一個國王的新衣嘅傳媒咯，而我哋不能容於嗰個國王的新衣裏面嘅小朋友咯，你可以繼續講，其實佢冇着衫，但係佢着衫好靚，但係你唔容許嗰個小朋友出嚟講，其實佢冇着衫嘅咁樣。
But in some quarters, the national security law was welcomed. Annie Kwok, a pro-establishment entrepreneur and vocal supporter of the Hong Kong police, had endured months of harassment by radical pro-democracy supporters during the 2019 protests.
即係起底，我嘅 YouTube 不停咁樣攻擊，恐嚇信都收埋，咁啊當然啦，喺鋪頭嗰度即係行過會鬧你啊，甚至乎會揾雷射筆射我哋啊，咁我自己咧就覺得非常之痛心嘅，係啦，即係點解好好地一個香港咁平靜、咁和平，突然間好似變咗人間煉獄咁樣咧，日日都好似打仗咁樣。咁我亦都好感謝我哋嘅祖國啦，係啦，喺香港最亂嘅時候咧，就俾咗我哋呢個國安法去止暴制亂啦，即係起碼你唔會再見到有掟磚、燒人，係咪？咁啊，我覺得呢個社會係好迅速咁樣回復平靜嘅。
In a more recent move, Carrie Lam's administration introduced sweeping changes to Hong Kong's electoral system ahead of the election in December last year. Under the new Patriot Law, the total number of seats in Hong Kong's Legislative Council increased from 70 to 90. However, the number of directly elected representatives was reduced from 35 to 20. The remaining representatives will be chosen by an elections committee and special interest groups. This meant that representatives voted in by citizens now make up less than a quarter of the council.
Every single country, they only elect people who are patriots. So by revamping our electoral system, by making sure that it's patriots leading Hong Kong, I think it's definitely a good move and make Hong Kong a lot more competitive than before.
Critics, however, are concerned that this could eradicate opposition voices in Parliament.
The Patriot Act is significant because of the sweeping criteria, essentially eviscerating the pro-democratic camp and only allowing pro-Beijing candidates into the Legislative Council. Of course, the consequences of this is a very clear backsliding of democratic processes. And indeed, the turnout was at an all-time low.
Only 30% of Hong Kong's 4.5 million eligible voters cast their ballots in last December's elections. It was the lowest voter turnout since the 1997 handover.
The Hong Kong people, most importantly, has no interest to participate in such a sham election because they know that it's very far from what they used to have.
By most accounts, Lam's term coincided with some of the most severe restrictions of Hong Kong's civil liberties. For some, the last 5 years have left the city irrevocably changed.
我係信一國兩制，信港人治港，即係我信北京對我哋嘅承諾啦。咁到今日呢港人治港、高度自治、一國兩制，同埋喺基本法裏邊寫咗嘅新聞自由，即係對我哋嘅保障仲有幾多咧？咁我諗大家即係有眼睇咯。
I would say the DNA of Hong Kong has completely changed. The Hong Kong people are now voting with their feet by leaving Hong Kong. You know, you're seeing the teachers, nurses, the doctors, the professionals, all leaving Hong Kong.
As unhappy residents leave the city, Hong Kong's population has declined for the first time in over a decade. What impact will this unprecedented exodus have?
我哋喺香港一路都長大，一路到啱1年前就過嚟台灣。其實政治啊、未來啊，其實如果走到嘅都走啦。咁呢句説話都基本上每個朋友都有講。
As Hong Kong prepares for a change in leadership, the city is experiencing its worst population decline in decades, driven by immigration. In the 12 months since the passage of the National Security Law, an estimated 90,000 people have left the metropolis.
Since the National Security Law being imposed in Hong Kong since the 1st of July 2020, we've been processing hundreds of Canada and Australia business and investor visas every year. And actually, you know, the numbers keep increasing about maybe a few percent every year. And about 25% already settled overseas. And currently we are receiving about 500 new inquiries every month.
And these numbers could continue to rise. A survey by the Chinese University of Hong Kong showed that 15% of Hong Kongers have plans to migrate. The 3 most popular destinations: Australia, UK, and Taiwan.
大家可以理解，就是香港的环境，就是整个就是非常的纷扰。那在这样的一个情况之下，很多人就想要出走。那台湾就成为他们一个可能的选项。反送中之后，2020年居留许可人数已经到10813，这个数据惊人的是，它事实上它的年增幅，也就是2020比2019是增加了84.6%，就是这一年突然暴增。
如果是稍微对于自由，尤其他们是曾经自由过的一个民族，所以我想很多数的香港人都是无法接受这件事的。那来到台湾的香港人，多数除了一些，例如说我们语言相近，或是文化相近，然后生活物价稍微比较低的这一些原因之外，其实更多是认同台湾是一个自由民主的地方。
41-year-old Jack Lee moved to Taiwan a year ago, together with his wife and son. A former digital marketer, he now owns a fashion retail store in Taoyuan City.
我哋呢一代，我哋係西方管治嘅西方教育、西方管治嘅國家出身嘅人，我哋係受到好自由嘅對待嘅成長，個背景好唔同。突然之間你要我好封閉，其實我哋就好抗拒。我哋呢個年代會覺得中國好似太早介入香港嘅事，唔穩定都好高，所以嗰陣時已經決定咗申請移民。
Similarly, Lau Guangxin, an award-winning artist from Hong Kong, has relocated to Taiwan since last year. A vocal supporter of the pro-democracy movement, he produced political art inspired by the anti-government street protests in 2019.
政治現況就當然係我會嚟台灣嘅一個原因啦嚇。好多民意都未必可以直接表達到出嚟，或者係議員都未必係一個好代表到人民嘅一個角色。呢本書就叫《被消失的香港》啦。本書係俾唔同地方嘅人睇下，係即係為咗令大家知道啊，其實反送中唔係無啦啦爆發嘅喎，其實佢係同以前嗰個社會轉變，除咗回歸以外，都有其他真係好日常民生嘅嗰個演變都好有關係嘅。最早畫政治嘅嘢其實就係喺雨傘革命嗰陣時，安法過咗之後，我的確係相對畫少咗嘅，因為其實都要觀摩下，其實呢條法例嗰個執行嘅力度有幾大嘅，有少少冒險嘅，不過都有照畫。
For Jack, the decision to leave the city of his birth was not simply a political one. For years, Hong Kongers have had to contend with the rising cost of living, inequality, and soaring property prices.
香港社會問題又咁大， 香港讀書壓力又好高，一個咁細嘅地方點解可以容納咁多人？而年青個班就會覺得我住屋又住唔到，物價係咁升，跟住不斷將個物價提高，政府都唔覺得有問題。國安法令到社會穩定，咁其實年青人都會覺得係好事。但係問題係等於我哋嘅問題唔存在。決定困唔困難其實係困難，但係我就唔係用咗好多時間去做決定嘅啫。主要我哋自己想有個好嘅生活，下一代又可以有個好啲嘅選擇，爸爸媽媽又可以過嚟。咁唔係話太係因為政治，我哋覺得佢會變得好差就算，但係未變嘅嗰陣時未去到好差。咁依家真係證實咗係一個好極端嘅一件事。
近排嘅香港係越嚟越差啦，即係其實唔止係政治啦，即係咁香港嘅經濟都冇咁好啦，加埋近排嘅疫情都好失控啦，我都會擔心屋企嘅嚇。
For now, Jack and Lau do not plan to return to Hong Kong anytime soon. They have created a slice of Hong Kong in their new home.
呢度咁當然係開心嘅，掛住緊係香港咯。每晚阿仔仔都會打電話俾公公婆婆，我哋會繼續保持佢係香港人，我哋會繼續講廣東話，亦都會繼續俾佢接觸香港嘅嘢。同一時間其實佢係一個台灣出世嘅小朋友，咁變咗我都會覺得其實佢繼續兩邊嘅文化都要係去學咯，就冇話邊一樣嘢重要啲。我唔係啲咩政治嘅人物啦，所以其實我冇乜太多喺台灣再牽涉政治嘅嘢，更加唔會搞㗎啦。最緊要屋企人開開心心嚟到呢度可以穩穩定定。
Making a decision to settle abroad permanently is not an easy decision. It's a big decision, right? So I don't think it is a single factor that kind of affect them to make that big decision. Maybe say security, work-life balance, quality of education. So these are a combination of factors, not just purely on the political issue.
Stemming the brain drain could be one challenge that the new leadership will have to grapple with.
Since 2020, I think more people, who leave Hong Kong rather than coming to Hong Kong. In 2021, I think we have a net loss about 91,000. So whether the situation it will be stabilized, we don't know yet. We have an aging population. When you have such a low fertility rate, we have to ensure that we have enough economic active people, I think, to maintain the economic and social development in Hong Kong.
On this question of mass immigration, while it's certainly significant and it will have some social costs, we shouldn't overplay this as well. Not a lot of Hong Kongers actually have the social mobility, the luxury, the awareness, or the possibility to immigrate. So this notion that Hong Kong is hemorrhaging talent, while there's some truth in it, I don't think it's the complete picture. Attractiveness of Hong Kong as a place to work may indeed be reduced, but this is not going to pan out to be some sort of crisis or population crisis where you have several millions wanting to leave Hong Kong very quickly.
For Hong Kong, first of all, we have locally groomed talent. The higher education sector of this city is still vibrant. That could replenish our talent pool. And secondly, when we reconnect with mainland China, they could replenish our talent pool. Hong Kong used to be a place which characterized with talent coming from different parts of the world. Personally, I hope that Hong Kong could still be a kind of global hub.
But as Hong Kong struggles to retain its people, something else threatens its status as a global hub: COVID-19.
Before this year and the COVID-19 crisis, people seldom think that Hong Kong would close its border to the world. It is now so difficult to enter and coming out from this city. And I think the main uncertainty to Hong Kong people and people of the world is whether Hong Kong could still be a kind of global hub in Asia.
In July 2020, the Biden administration issued an advisory to American companies operating in Hong Kong. It warned businesses that the newly passed national security law could adversely impact their operations. There were concerns that tightening of civil liberties could blemish Hong Kong's shine as a global financial hub.
I think in the international competitiveness and how attractive Hong Kong is, it clearly took a hit. High degree of openness that Hong Kong had in terms of how open the society was has dramatically changed over the past 2 years. And this will make it much less attractive for highly talented international expats to move into Hong Kong.
I came here in 2019, so everyone tells me that I didn't see the golden age of Hong Kong, like the new things that are going on in politics. It's just making the city less of this multiple faceted place to be as well.
I think some of the changes do change external countries' views of Hong Kong and the status that it had before. You can see that, so it has made a difference to how people feel.
But for the most part, the fears did not materialize. Most multinationals stayed put in Hong Kong.
The financial industry, they've had some degree of nervousness, but I think overall the most important elements in terms of Hong Kong maintaining or upholding its regulatory standards has not been affected by the national security law. Also, international investors can enter the Chinese market via Hong Kong.
Hong Kong still has some good things going for it. It's key infrastructure, pool of talents, its place between East and West historically, banking infrastructure there, so on and so forth. I think the reality is that it's not so straightforward that this erosion of political freedoms, liberal values will lead to Hong Kong somehow going down the drain. I think that eventually people will be pragmatic. They will still want to do business in Hong Kong.
In the past year, we actually see a 6% growth in our GDP, and that's a strong growth. And it just kind of shows that to a lot of business people, Hong Kong is still an attractive place to do business in. So if you don't break the law, you're a law-abiding citizen, then nothing has changed for you.
Instead, the threat to Hong Kong as a global city arrived from another quarter. The last 2 years of Carrie Lam's time in office were marked by the global pandemic. In lockstep with China, Hong Kong has maintained a COVID-0 strategy. This meant banning flights from a number of countries and imposing a 2-week hotel quarantine for travelers, even as other nations removed similar restrictions. Then in March, COVID cases in the city reached record highs, caused by the highly transmissible Omicron variant. During this 5th wave of infections, the city braced itself for another lockdown, leaving businesses and residents in frustration and uncertainty.
每一波嘅疫情咁樣啱啱叫做好翻少少啦，生意跟住又嚟過，又全部閂晒，我哋又從頭嚟過。經濟損失上仲痛苦係啦，同埋市民心理嗰個陰影啊，或者心理嗰個痛苦咧就會仲大。真係蝕錢蝕到我都唔知點講啦，真係唔知可以捱到幾耐。嗱，靜到幾恐怖！平時咧係坐滿晒人。
Annie Kwok runs a food stall in Sham Shui Po, selling Japanese-style beef rice. Before the pandemic, her customers were mainly university students and young working adults.
哇！依家啲生意梗係慘淡啦，最差嗰陣時啲情況，我諗得翻之前嘅1/10度啦。哇！多謝晒 ，thank you。咁人流就唔使講啦，你哋都睇到啦，呢度完全係冇人㗎啦，依家。以前食飯時間係完全揾唔到位嘅。 依家就，唉，我都唔想講咧，好慘淡。我哋依家最少每個月都要蝕4-5萬蚊。我哋基本上所有嘅做生意嘅人都喺度放緊血嘅。咁你繼續咁樣放血嘅時候咧，遲早大家都真係會即係一命嗚呼㗎啦。
我初入嚟做嗰陣時候咧，的士仲未去到第5波啦。咁生意上邊咧都 OK 嘅，都 OK 嘅。咁而家去到第5波咧，就已經開始一落千丈啦啲生意。咁以前可能揾到有1000蚊一日，咁而家可能得幾百蚊咁樣咯。咁而家到疫情咧，就比較個時間就會長咗好多啦。因為你做到半夜都未到呢個數，咁你要做到成起碼3-4點咯，先至可以揾到幾百蚊。
Much of confusion around the COVID response was laid at the feet of Chief Executive Carrie Lam. There were calls for tougher COVID restrictions as criticisms of Lam's government mounted over the surging infections during the city's 5th wave early this year. At the same time, her government faced huge pressure to further ease COVID measures as the vaccination rate rose.
The COVID situation is a mess. The Hong Kong government is clearly not ready. Even after 2 years, they're still not ready. And the COVID cases are going through the roof. The economy is not well. People are not happy. They're leaving. And that's, of course, to do with the very hard COVID policies to contain this virus and pursue the zero COVID policy. It is already taking its toll on Hong Kong.
其實我諗咧，一由呢一個 COVID 入嚟香港開始咧，都覺得香港政府係有盡力嘅。係啦，但係力有不逮咯，係啦，有好多嘢係真係做得非常之差嘅。咁我覺得香港咧就有好長時間去 recover 㗎啦，去康復㗎啦，因為7路8選㗎啦。經過19年到21年嘅黑暴啦，係啦，咁跟住又21年就接住有 COVID 啦，咁而家香港個 Omicron 又爆得咁犀利。
Possibly as a result of the suffocating COVID controls, Hong Kong recorded over 160,000 departures in the first 3 months of 2022. This is 6 times more than the previous year's total. At the same time, one survey found that over 40% of expats are considering leaving the city due to its COVID rules.
I know quite a few people who have left. At the moment, I don't have any plans, any solid plans to leave Hong Kong, but if things continue the way they are, then it's going to be really hard for me because I'm a yoga teacher.
Hong Kong needs to be an international city. It's part of what makes Hong Kong great. So being cut off from the world is pretty difficult. Hopefully it's not a long-term trend.
I think Hong Kong right now probably has one of the harshest, if not the harshest, COVID-19 requirements and restrictions out there. Hong Kongers are frustrated with the requirements for mass testing, with movement restrictions and so on and so forth as well. Will there be some effects on businesses and CEOs or high-level executives or talents wanting to leave Hong Kong? Probably.
The direction of the Hong Kong's government and Beijing's thinking is that if they can't live with the quarantine and the lockdown, they could be our guests and leave. That's very different from what Hong Kong was as an international city, because it's always about connecting with the international community and using Hong Kong as a springboard. That's going to further change Hong Kong's so-called Asia's world city status. That is not a world city. It is a Chinese city, not very different from others.
As the chief executive elections loom, Hong Kong's COVID recovery will likely be overseen by its new leader. However, he will face familiar constraints that confronted Carrie Lam.
Hong Kong is trying to be the best of both worlds. But in terms of how you handle a pandemic, you can really only choose one option, right? You either be as stringent as mainland China is, or you decide like how they're doing it in Europe or in the US. So yeah, you gotta have to take one side.
But due to Hong Kong's need to play by Beijing's rulebook, it means that it is unable to act decisively without the mainland stamp of approval. Hong Kong is stuck in a situation right now in which it is unable to open to the mainland and the outside world. So not surprising, if you're staying in Hong Kong, if businesses in Hong Kong, you'll be very unhappy at this situation.
And there was the true one country, two system. This wouldn't have happened. The mainland would deal with the pandemic in one way, and the Hong Kong would deal with it in our own way. We keep Hong Kong as an international business center, but in the new Hong Kong, everything is from the top. Everything has to follow Beijing. And so this is now coming out in a very clear way as an example of what new Hong Kong is like.
With uncertainty about the city's status as an international hub and public mistrust over the government's COVID strategy, will the next chief executive be up to the mammoth task of leading Hong Kong through one of its most turbulent times? Carrie Lam's tenure has been marked by the massive pro-democracy protests in 2019, which led to greater Chinese control in Hong Kong. And more recently, she oversaw the city's worst COVID-19 outbreak.
Carrie Lam has faced a lot of challenges over the last few years. So in a sense, for her wanting to step down, it's not a surprise per se, purely from a sort of a personal angle. I think Lam will be remembered for being at the helm during the 2019 protests and the subsequent, worst landslide defeat in history during the local elections the same year. But if you take a Chinese perspective, actually these negative developments have given Beijing a wonderful opportunity to stake a greater political claim on Hong Kong, including portraying these events as a Western front to challenge the Chinese government. So in other words, Lam has become a political pawn in the broader contestation of geopolitical competition and influence between China and the United States, in which Lam herself admitted when she said her hands were tied. Of course, if there's no one suitable to replace you, I don't think you are allowed to step down. So in that sense, Carrie's decision to step down also probably, they had to go through Beijing.
Shortly after Carrie Lam's announcement, Hong Kong's second most senior official, Chief Secretary John Lee, put in his bid for the top post. He's said to be Beijing's pick as Lam's successor.
I have tendered to the Chief Executive my resignation from the post of the Chief Secretary for Administration. If my resignation is approved by the Central People's Government, I shall plan to prepare to stand for the upcoming chief executive election.
I think for Chinese politics as a whole, a lot of it is opaque. Decisions are made already, but the fact that this candidate appeared, I think all these are pretty much scripted. The candidates has been vetted, blessings have been given. So I don't expect any sort of fireworks.
So, who is John Lee, and why is he favored by Beijing to be Hong Kong's next leader?
He started off as a police officer, rising all the way up. So on that, that would give him a fair bit of political capital with Beijing. If John Lee were to be the next CE, you would see an approach that would be very much like that of law enforcement officer when it comes to politics in Hong Kong.
A security hardliner, John Lee served as Secretary for Security in Carrie Lam's administration from July 2017 to June 2021. During his tenure, he directed the police response to 2019's anti-government protests. Since announcing his candidacy, Lee has stated that a priority of his administration is the enactment of Article 23 of the city's Basic Law, a bill to allow Hong Kong to have its own national security legislation. Article 23 will outlaw offences such as treason, sedition, theft of state secrets, and a ban on foreign political organizations, which are currently not addressed by the Beijing-imposed national security law.
Article 23, of course, is one of the priorities because it is a constitutional duty.
John Lee's plans to enact Article 23 signals his tough approach to national security and indicate that his administration will likely continue Beijing's emphasis on political security as the city's key agenda when he comes into office. Article 23 was previously shelved due to its unpopularity.
I think there's still a lot of polarization in the societies, which we need to address. I mean, we still suffer from this after effect of the 2019 the social movement. There's quite a mixed feeling, I think, in the economic and political development in Hong Kong in the past 2 years.
The past 5 years of Hong Kong has probably been the most troubling 5 years in Hong Kong history. We have had the 2019 large-scale demonstration, and then since 2020, we have really seen a pandemic being out of control. And so a lot of businesses are being hurt. A lot of people cannot go out. People are suffering. So we need our next chief executive to really step up and take good leadership and to lead Hong Kong out of the situation.
I think his key challenges, will not be very different from what Carrie Lam faced during her tenureship. Beijing would want the next Hong Kong administration to be able to rein in any residual challenges to domestic stability and to ensure pro-independence voices do not result in the kind of mass protests and turbulence we saw in 2019. More fundamentally, if Hong Kong is to reclaim its past reputation of a global city, he would have to find a way to distinguish Hong Kong from other Chinese cities without giving the impression that Hong Kong is being too independent. And I think that would be the biggest challenge for the chief executive when it comes to power.
Yet, with Beijing exerting more control over Hong Kong in the last 5 years, some are skeptical of the chief executive's ability to enact change.
Over the past few years, is that or even worse, they will try to anticipate what Beijing wants before they take action. So really, it's a title that is that no longer hinges on the personality that is occupying the position.
That nobody really cares about who will become the next chief executive, because it doesn't matter who is the next chief executive. The policy will be the same, following every footstep of Beijing's edicts. The whole promise and whole design of one country, two system has been completely thrown out the window.
On April 14, the nomination period for the chief executive election closed, with John Lee emerging as the sole candidate in the chief executive election. This marks the first uncontested race since Hong Kong's handover in 1997. Electing the next chief executive will take place on May 8th. Under Hong Kong's electoral system, the heavily pro-Beijing election committee will vote to select the city's leader. The public will have little say in who will helm their government.
行政長官嗰啲嘢都唔到我哋理，亦都唔想理，期望就不大㗎啦。咁只係希望唔好繼續衰落咯。
嗰個候選人都已經係一個中國政府直接嘅委任嘅時候，咁就更加同即係香港人嘅一個共同利益就唔係太大關係嘅。
可以講係直接對香港嘅統治係冇期望㗎啦，所以你中意點玩就點玩啦。其實依家香港嗰啲朋友都係咁樣㗎啦，即係我講咩都死㗎啦，咁不如算啦。所以基本上你中意點就點啦。
The upcoming chief executive will have an unenviable task of working, I think, with a fairly hostile, apathetic public, and also a very demanding boss that requires and wants results. To me, the biggest question is, can the new government, with the backing of and support of the mainland government, tackle some of the root material social drivers of discontent? High housing prices, untenable rich poor divide, divisions in society brought on by these economic structural factors. And this would mean reining in the tycoons, the landlords, which is in some ways far harder task.
The next chief executive will assume power on July 1st. As the leader of a global financial hub, he will have to balance Beijing's mandates and the concerns of the international business community. He will also hope to avoid the civil unrests that plagued the city during his predecessor's tenure. Whether he succeeds will shape the futures of Hong Kong and its citizens.
咁我自己係土生土長嘅香港人啦，即係我非常非常之深愛香港，即係無論香港發生咩事，我都希望盡一個小市民嘅力量去令到香港更加好、更加和諧。即係希望藉住今次嘅疫情啦，即係慢慢去將香港嘅撕裂去減低啦，即係大家唔好再分顏色，唔好再分你我。一齊攜手咁樣去對抗呢個疫情，
充滿變數啦。公道講嚇，我唔敢太樂觀啦，亦都唔想太悲觀啦。畢竟大家都係繼續生活落去。長遠我唔想走嘅，好老實講，即係你冇得講嘅，即係你唔知下一步會係點。